Story of St Brigid. Take 23. Only joking. Uh, no, it's has taken a few attempts to make it, but not quite that many. But before the camera goes again, I'm going to try and get through. Okay. So, story of St Brigid. Bridget was the daughter of a slave woman called Breashach, and Dovtach, a chieftain, but who was Breashach's master. Now Dovtach's wife was jealous of the bondwoman, and she ordered her husband to choose between the servant and herself. Now Dovtach loved Breashach and did not want to part with her, but his wife insisted. It was with great sadness then that he went out with the servant to sell her to another master. On the way he passed the house of a druid, who, hearing the chariot wheels, came out to see which chief was passing by. He recognized Dovtach and asked him who owned the slave that sat beside him in the chariot. "She's mine," Dovtach answered, "and she is bearing my child, but my wife is forcing me to sell her." The druid looked at Breashach for a moment, and then made a prophecy about the child that she was carrying. "Your wife's children will be servants to this servant's child, for the daughter who is in her womb will be marvellous and famous, and she'll shine like a sun amongst the stars." Now when Dovtach heard this, he turned his chariot around and took Breashach back home with him. As the months went by, Dovtach's wife got more and more jealous of the servant girl. In the end, Dovtach had no choice but to send her away. So he sold Breashach to a druid on the understanding that he sold only the mother. He had not sold the unborn child. She was his child and would be born free. Breashach worked as a dairymaid in the druid's house, and one day, just as she entered the house carrying a pail of milk, she gave birth to a beautiful daughter. She washed the baby girl in the milk from the pail and gave her the name Brigid, which means fairy arrow. Brigid grew up a beautiful, wise and kind woman. She worked in the druid's household, herding the sheep, feeding the fowl, and looking after the beggars who came to the door. One day she heard one of Patrick's monks preaching, and she believed in the new religion and became a Christian. From that day on, her kindness and love for the poor increased. Though she was well treated in the druid's house, Bridget longed to see her father. So, taking her courage in her hands, she went to the druid and asked for his permission. To her amazement, he agreed. Dovtach was sent for, and Bridget was given back to her father, a free woman. Dovtach put his daughter in charge of running the household, but Bridget was so charitable that she gave away to the poor anything that was available, whether it could be spared or not. Even stray animals were given their fair share of meat from the cooking pot. As time went on, Dovtach became resentful of his daughter's open-handedness, But in spite of his complaints, Brigid would not change her ways. His wife too resented the beautiful girl, and became as jealous of her as she had been of her mother. Between them they conspired to get rid of Brigid by hiring her out to a Leinster king. As Brigid and her father got into the chariot to travel to the king's fort, Dubtoc, who was determined to break his daughter's pride, said to her, "I would have you know you are not travelling in my chariot out of honour due to you, but because I mean to sell you as a servant, as a slave. You will grind flour in a millstone for your new master." At the king's fortress, Dubtoc left Brigid outside in the chariot. While he was away, a beggar with open sores came up to the chariot and asked for help. As she had nothing else to give the beggar, and Brigid, being Brigid, gave him Dubtoc's sword. Now, inside the fort, the chieftain was offering to sell his daughter to the king. "Why are you selling your own daughter?" the king asked in astonishment. "She will not stop selling my property and giving away my wealth to outcasts and worthless beggars, and I can't stand it no longer," Dubtoc told him angrily. "Tell the girl to come in here," ordered the king. Dubtoc went out to the chariot to bring Brigid in, and when he found she had given his sword away, he was beside himself with rage. He marched her before the king and told him the story. The king looked at Brigid for a moment, and then asked, "If you give away your father's wealth, what will you do to mine?" To which Brigid immediately replied, "I swear to God that even if I had your power, your land, your wealth, even if I owned this whole province of Leinster, I would give it all away to the Lord of the Elements." Now, upon hearing this, the king's answer to Dubtoc was, "It is not for you or me to decide this woman's fate. Her merit is higher in God's sight than in men's." So he set Brigid free and sent her back home, and gave Dubtoc an ivory-hilted sword to replace the one that had been given away. And that is the end of part 1 of St Brigid. Tomorrow I will post the second phase of St Brigid's life. Until then, enjoy, and please leave comments. I love you all. Namaste.